I'm your host, Captain Jack Sparrow. Please sit back and enjoy as I commence on the full version of my documentary on the Salem witch trials, titled The Salem Witch Trials: How Evil Controlled a Community. Between 1692 and 1693, more than 200 people in the colonial era Salem, Massachusetts, were falsely accused of practicing witchcraft, and 18 of them were executed. More than 3 centuries later, the Salem witch trials remain one of the most disturbing, traumatic moments in American history, and an example of the true nature of evil. Why, an example of evil and paranoia, did Salem citizens turn on their own neighbours and fantasize that they had become minions of Satan and committed crimes that never occurred? Why was Salem's populace so willing to betroth the worst? And why did the colonial officers use such breathtaking, cruel methods of torture, such as crushing an elderly man's ribs under the weight of rocks, to extract confessions from the accused? Fear and religious favour undoubtedly played a role in the colonists' extremism, as Elizabeth Rees, author of Damned Women, Sinners and Witches in New England, explains. The New England Puritans had a very real dread of the devil, whom they saw as continuously waiting to ensure them and lead them to eternal damnation. Other theories told that the witch trials were a reaction to stresses that the colonial society was experiencing. But regardless of the cause, the Salem witch trials provide unsettling historical proof that it doesn't necessarily require Hitler, Osama bin Laden, or a Charles Manson to participate horrifying evil to the century. They suggest that unexceptional, seemingly national and moral people are capable of committing or supporting cruel injustices as well. In understanding what occurred in Salem during this time, it's important to place them in a historical context when the events occurred. It was a common belief that people could pledge allegiance to Satan and become witches with supernatural powers to harm others. Mass persecution of suspected witches was such a frequent occurrence that in one estimate some 50,000 men and women were executed for witchcraft across Europe between the 1500s and the 1800s. Historians say that hysteria about witchcraft often seemed to coincide with situations in which people were under stress from larger outside events, such as wars, that they were helpless to control, as John Goldsmith, creator of the Cromwell Museum in Huntington, England, told the BBC in 2010. Witch trials may have helped restore people's sense of control. People who were different in any way through age or physical disability or mental disability were picked out by those who wanted to believe there was some specific reason why things had gone wrong, Goldsmith had previously said. Salem Village, which was located in present-day location of Danvers, Massachusetts, had the requisite conditions for that scenario. A war between England and France in North America had driven scares of displaced people into Salem, and their needs put strain on the community's resources. The village also was in turmoil from international controversy because of a Reverend Samuel Ferris, who had arrived a few years before the trials to become the first local ordained clergyman. Ferris was disliked by some of his clergymen. Some even stated he was greedy, and that he had provoked quarrels with his patrons, saying that some of them had even used the work of the devil. Tituba and the Children by Alfred Fredericks. These tensions put the community on edge and set the stage for the outbreak of hysteria that was to come in January and February of 1692. That's when several young girls, including Ferris's 9-year-old daughter, suddenly started behaving strangely, screaming, throwing things, making strange sounds, and contorting themselves in odd positions. The fit spread to others as well. A local physician, Dr. William Griggs, concluded that the symptoms had indeed been caused by witchcraft. The girls accused Rev. Ferris, his West Indian servant Tituba, and 2 other women of having cast spells upon them. They also reported that they had seen witches flying about. Today, many believe that the girls concocted the hoax using descriptions of demonic possessions in the then recent book by Boston clergyman Cotton Mather as source material. But when Tituba, who may have been afraid of being a scapegoat, confessed to being a witch and implicated the other defendants, it fueled the frenzy. Eventually, William Phillips, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, created a special court to hear witchcraft cases. Its 5 judges, 3 of whom were friends of Mather, used methods that today would seem bizarre, such as compelling a defendant to touch one of the supposed victims to see whether it stopped their demonic symptoms. They also accepted as evidence gossip, rumours, and telltales, such as one man's claim that he had witnessed a suspect transform himself into a cat. As more people were accused of being witches, the inquest also began to rely upon torture to extract confessions. 2 teenage boys who were arrested, for example, were confined with their necks holstered to their heels, till the blood was ready to come out of their noses, as one of their fellow prisoners later recalled. The trials were so clearly rigged and based upon concocted evidence that even Mather felt concealed to complain. It was better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person to be condemned, he wrote in a letter to the governor. Eventually, after Philip's own wife was accused of witchcraft, he apparently concealed the financial nature of the proceedings, and in May 1693 he pardoned all those who had been hanged and the elderly man who had been killed by being crushed with stone slabs during torture. What remains frightening about the Salem witch trials is that they highlight a dark side of human nature, which has come to the fore and fore again in the anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s, for example, and which still lurks within people's psychics today, as Dr. Susan Hayters Friedman and Andrew Howie wrote in a 2013 article for the Journal of the American Academy of Psychiatric Law. The community legitimized the roles that had been taken by the girls and misguided professionals, clergymen and doctors, help, and those in authority willingly came up with a phenomenon that has been repeated across time and place. They also show how seamlessly rational, moral people can be induced to support wrongs or even perform them if they fail to contemplate the nature of their deeds as a nation. That philosopher Hannah Arendt called brutality of evil, that suggests that no matter how far we think we've advanced since Puritan times, there's always a danger that the horror of the Salem witch trials will, in some fashion, repeat itself once again.